Welcome to this tutorial. We are at Glenwood Canyon in Colorado, and I'm laying down a wash at the top of some water, then going into some yellow, and then a mixture of yellow with a little red. You can choose which colors you'd like to use, but I've chosen winter yellow and a little light red as I come further down, with very small touch of it. There is a link for the materials used. I'm using a mop brush at the moment, and with that I have some Windsor blue, starting at the top of the sky area and slowly working my way down so that there is less pigment as I work my way down to the top of the mountains. Just carefully painting around those. There will be trees shown at the top of the mountain, so don't worry if you go a tiny bit over, because they'll be covered up anyway. So continue with that, and occasionally you'll see me mop up the sides of the paper with excess pigment and water to make sure we don't get creep back. And then I'm laying on some dark blue, once again working from the top and coming down so that I have a little bit more intensity in the sky. As always, you will see that the colours do dry a lot lighter than they look when they're first laid down. And again, remember to mop up here and there to avoid that creep back. And occasionally I've used a hairdryer, like on this occasion, to speed up the process of drying. Now I'm using yellow ochre for the underpainting of the distant mountain area there. Using something like a number 10 brush at the moment for a little bit more accuracy, but nevertheless a brush that is big enough to hold enough pigment. Then I've used a little bit of the Windsor blue with some light red and doing wet in wet to shape up the different rock face area. Purposefully leaving little light bits here and there, which you'll see later will help us to show light and dark. Now for the tree areas at the top of the mountains, using the same brush, which has got a nice point to it. And I've added Windsor yellow and a little bit of permanent sap green. And you could add a little Windsor blue as well to vary the colour. And occasionally here and there I'll just drop in whilst it's wet some pure Windsor yellow to show lighter areas. Continue with that as you go along. You can decide where you want to put emphasis. Now you see a slightly lighter version, as I mentioned earlier. A little bit more Windsor yellow mix in this one with the green, and to show variety. I've gone now to a smaller brush for a little bit more control and detail. Say something like a number 4 or a number 6 will do. And shaping around those rock areas. And those rock areas you'll see later will give more definition to them, more emphasis of light and dark. And here and there we'll be using the scraping technique at the side of the brush to show the different patterns in the rock face and make them look as convincing as possible. So as always, we're in a situation where we're very much doing an underpainting and then coming on top of that. And I would also like to say that something exciting is going to happen. Yes, we are going to have another competition. Yes, If you put your name below, just comment below with your name, will be shown, and then you'll be able to be entered to a free competition, and the winner will be able to choose a print from my website absolutely free. I'm just showing you the website billholcomb.com there, and continuing with the painting, just put in as much definition as possible in the rock areas. It is quite a long process, certainly admit that. So it might be a person who is sort of in the intermediate stage of painting watercolors for this one, because there's a lot of back and forth and building up detail and structure and so forth. On my website, you will see that I have a variety of artworks, and when I do these tutorial videos, some of them are much longer, like this one, very detailed tutorial, and others are much shorter, where, for instance, I might want to emphasize certain techniques. At the moment, I'm using a dry brush technique. I've first of all laid down a wash of a light green, and then once that's almost dry, some areas dry completely, using the side brush technique, where there's a little bit of pigment on the brush, not too much, so not too much water either, and then scraping in to shape the trees and bushes. And you will see later that there will be a good contrast of light and dark in those areas. And if necessary, at a later stage, once that's dry, we could do a little bit of lifting here and there, say on the top of a tree or bush, with, say, a bristle brush with some water on it, lay that on the area that you want light, and then use a soft tissue to lift pigment and make it look lighter. Now a much smaller brush would come down to the water line where the bank meets the water, and we're just laying in little rock areas that are close to the edge. Varied colours of brown, you can use your Winsor blue and light red here and mix up different strengths, different intensities of hue. Let that dry, and then you can go back forwards. You can then, you might notice things or want to emphasize things here and there, and then you can just go backwards, forwards to different aspects of the paintings. So most of that side on the left hand side is done now. So we've gone to the tallest structure, the tallest mountain here, laying some green down first, and then we'll be putting some darker green on top, showing the shapes of the trees at the very top of the mountain. Same again on this part of the mountain. Light at first, and now, whilst it's wet, coming in with the darker green. And use a small brush again. You can use a 4 or even a 2 to be able to produce much more control and fine detail. Just shape everything up as you wish. And don't forget that I'm telling you the colours that I'm using, because most people wish to know, but you could choose different colours, see what's available in your palette. And in terms of the sizes of the brushes, although I'm using a number 10 right now, you might only have a number 8, which is fair enough. So just use whatever's available to you. Laying on some yellow ochre again for the underpainting of this rock face. And we're going to use the same process, the same principle as we did for the rocks on the left hand side. And then they're also likely to have even more detail here and there. Purposefully left little areas lighter so that we will end up with a nice contrast of light and dark here and there for the rock face. At the moment, we're about getting close to halfway through this particular tutorial, and I do post very regularly all these free tutorials. So you can see them, but if you like and subscribe, then you do get notified of when a new video, an instructional video, has been posted. And as I've said before, I wish tutorials like this were available for me to see when I was starting to paint transparent watercolors over 40 years ago, because I know I would have made much more rapid progress. And from the feedback that we're getting, people are finding these extremely useful, and they're saying it's helping them a lot. So that's good feedback, and thank you for commenting when you do. We do encourage people to make comments and even make suggestions as to, hey, Bill, have you ever painted this location or that location? How about including this or that in one of your tutorials? Or can you include a tutorial that describes how to achieve a certain effect? You know, whether it's a weather effect like a misty situation, or how about a snow painting? You know, there are some snow paintings already on the site, but you might be interested in a particular aspect, a particular location for a snow painting. And we're coming up to winter now. So carry on with that. Still a fairly small brush for the detailed areas, a larger one for the washes. And we've made fairly good progress on that side of the mountain, but there will be a lot more emphasis of detail in that later as it dries, using the scraping technique as well. So for these particular trees on the right hand side going up the slope, I've got a very small brush. You know, you can use something like a 2, and see the way I'm shaping the trees, because these branches do go outwards. And here and there I will mix some underpainting, some of the light green, and then come over that with the much darker green. So yes, like and subscribe and get notified of all videos. This will take a little bit of time to complete because there are quite a few of these shaped trees there. But you can see the way I'm using the brush to follow the shapes of the particular subject matter, in this case these trees up the slope. Very, very small at the top, coming down, showing more body to the trees as we continue down. And here and there doing a little bit of scraping as well. See the way I'm using the brush? Not always just the point of the brush, certainly the point at the very top, but then going into a little bit of a scraping technique as you continue down. At the moment, we're 14 minutes through this tutorial, and this one lasts for nearly 23 minutes. So carry on. Please remember to watch the videos all the way to the end, because if you do, it helps our viewing times and it means we will be given more airtime. It's very important to see all the way through to the end. So they're shaped up nicely, and therefore, just like I did on the left hand side, I'm laying down a light wash first, and sometimes letting that dry, sometimes doing a little bit of wet and wet. And we've also got a little bit towards the water there, you see all those what will be a rocky area, you'll see that that's a rocky area where sometimes loose rocks have fallen down the slope and made certain patterns and have collected um, near the river. Laying in some dark, we've got light coming mainly from the right to the left. So we've got some dark areas to the left of these trees. Those structures that you see beyond where the raft of people is, whitewater rafting, there's little highways running across. So obviously, if you travel along there, you can see some spectacular views along that roadway. And people do trekking and hiking along the Glenwood Canyon as well, and there are trails especially for that. I continue with doing all those little rocks, lighter and darker here, so contrast and interest and light catching here and there. And you'll see at the shoreline there's a massive bunch of rocks that have fallen here, and we've shown the darker areas to the left of those. For the water, I've chosen to use a flat brush because I have more control of the situation, and I want to give the feeling, the action of ripple and waves crashing and producing foam, etc. So I'm purposefully leaving light areas in between and shaping the water as I go along. And when we get near the bank, I'm purposefully leaving some light areas where waves are crashing and causing a little bit of light and foam. And you can use two sizes of flat brush. You can, when you get into tighter areas with a little bit more control needed, you could go down to something like a quarter brush. Right now, you might have started with a half size or a 3/4 size, and then drop to the smaller size for detail. And whilst that's wet, I'm laying in some darker color so that there is great variety in the water. This is an easy way of painting water that has got a lot of ripple or a lot of action to it. Now that's completed, we're on to the fine detail of the raft. Here you could use something like a 1 or even a 0 size brush for the very tiny detail. So at the front of the raft, it's darker, and then as we continue along the raft, we add a little bit of water to the pigment and wash that out a little bit so it's lighter as it recedes away from us. And light is catching that side anyway. And then this raft has an area of black at the bottom, and as I've mentioned in other tutorials, I don't like to use black straight out the tube. I think it jumps out too much at you. I like to mix it up so that it's got a little bit of variation in it. And you could use French Ultra and light red, that makes a good black, or Windsor blue and light red. Now we're at the stage really where we're very much into detail. That's why I'm continuing to use such a fine brush, because we've got all these little paddles coming out, and then there'll be the people with their safety helmets on and their life vests and so forth. So at this stage, it's just a case of carefully studying your reference photo for people on a raft, whitewater rafting, and just trying to depict that as convincingly as you can. Always remembering again which way the light is coming from, like we did with the raft, and the same principle will apply as much as you can with this tiny detail for the people and their clothing. I think if you do this one, you'll end up with a very convincing painting. People will be impressed with what you've been able to achieve by following these techniques. And as I said before, don't be afraid of making comments and making suggestions, because people have done that in the past. And sometimes I've been able to then undertake a painting that has been suggested. And also, another reminder, don't forget to comment below so that we can see your name, and then we can award the winner the opportunity to purchase entirely free, including postage, one of my prints from my website. So just fine detail taking place right now. Just thinking of the different shapes involved, laying on a lighter wash first, and then coming into a more intense pigment. Please like and subscribe so that you can be notified, and you will help push us up the viewing table. So I think that's coming together quite nice, and we'll soon be at the end of this tutorial. Just about 25 seconds to go. Finish that detail, and here we are. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.